Good morning. Well, good evening, depending where you are on the planet today. Welcome to our webinar, Holistic Approach to Learning, Seeing the Whole Child. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Christina Vicart, and I am a well-being and a parent coach at the Edinburgh Montessori Art School. And tonight, I'm going to be your host. It is a very interactive webinar, so meaning you can post your questions in the comment section below, and we will be able to answer your questions. So we will talk about what is this holistic approach we have developed at EMAS, the concept, and also how we ended up here, the story, what worked well, and what we have tried and didn't really work well, what we can still improve, and our future plans. So let me present our team tonight, our panelists, experts in their field. So we have our two wonderful therapists, Rachel Moir. Rachel is a registered art therapist with the I don't want to make it. I want to make it right. HCPC, right?
Yeah.
She also supervising other visiting therapists at EMAS and works in close relationship with the additional needs team. And we also have, hi, Katrina. So Katrina is EMAS school occupational therapist, and she's also registered with the HCPC. I'm gonna make it. Kate. So Kate is the lead Montessori educator for our elementary group, and she's also EMAS additional support need, support lead. Ian. Ian is, all these letters, is a GTC registered teacher in humanities for the teens program, so 12 to 18. He's also a Gestalt therapist and taught meditation around the UK. But more importantly, you're also my partner in crime for the podcast. We have created a couple of months ago, and this is called Educators Now. So our next show is out next week, and we will talk about meditation for teenagers. The concept, but also the experience, and how is it relevant and how to implement it, more importantly, in your classroom or at home. So you can listen to the show on any usual podcast platforms, Apple or Spotify. But finally, we also have with us the founder and principal of the Edinburgh Montessori Art School, Emma Rattigan. And without any delay, I have my first question. So let me come back to this wonderful conversation that we are having today, which is about a holistic approach to learning, seeing the whole child. So how do you see the whole child at EMAS, and what is the specific approach that we have at EMAS? That's for you, Emma.
Thank you, Christina. I think we are very, very privileged to have this incredible model of human development devised by Maria Montessori that really gives us a lens through which to view every child as they pass through universal phases of development, and they display what we would call universal characteristics and tendencies throughout their growth. And these things that we are able to observe are expressed in the billions of ways and billions of possibilities that are inherent in every individual. So we see these patterns of behavior and patterns of interest and patterns of growth, but they are all expressed by each child individually. I suppose this gives us the lens through which we see the child, and then current neurological research is backing up the positive impacts of children who have in their day-to-day lives happiness, purpose, self-confidence, self-esteem. These allow children the ability to absorb and process learning much more easily. Happy children learn more easily. And it's not rocket science. Every educator knows this. Um, so we have to think about what contributes to a child's happiness. And this, I mean, there's an endless list of things that contribute to a child's happiness. I don't think any of them are necessarily the things a child would put on their list, like Lego and Paw Patrol or whatever they may choose on any given day. However, you know, we still listen to the children and what their interests are, but we view all of these things through the lens of human development that we have been trained to understand. Children, they need family and connection. They have needs, health needs, need for friendship, trust, play, love, shelter, food, nurture, fresh air, and we must not forget intellectual challenge as well. We really must not forget intellectual challenge. There's this whole array of needs. And I think one of the challenges that the world has at present is that traditional schooling systems focus in on the intellectual challenge, which is punctuated by, you know, every adult knows that children need fresh air and they need to go out and move and be healthy. So this intellectual challenge, which mostly centers around sitting at a desk, is punctuated by movement breaks, which in America are known as recess, and we just call it break time in Scotland, which is about 15 minutes, and then they go back to sitting still and doing this intellectual challenge. And obviously, all of us, you don't have to be an educator to know that if you stand back and you observe young children and you observe what they naturally want to do, if you're not interfering, obviously that always is, they would like to sit down and sit still and follow the text of a book and become deeply absorbed in facts. And well, no, they wouldn't. And I think hopefully that's woken you up. They wouldn't. When we really do observe children's behavior, it could not be more opposite from this. Children run, they jump, they climb, build, chat, they hug, they read, they snuggle, they dance. Basically, everything they do expresses their need for movement. Children need to move. And this brings us as educators to think about what is the point of education? What is the purpose of a school? What are we for? What are our jobs? What is it that we are supposed to be doing if it is not to facilitate the development that comes naturally to children and build upon that and take that into consideration? So we're going to consider, and I think everybody has really interesting things to contribute tonight, but we're going to discuss how we use the multiple disciplines at our school: occupational therapy, arts therapies, teachers who have backgrounds in various other areas to support a neurodiverse range of pupils, much, much broader than another type of classroom might manage to support. And I think the basis which we start from with this is always movement. There's movement inherent in everything that children do. And when we really see the child, then we really start to understand our own purpose. And I believe that our purpose as educators, and I hope my colleagues would join me in agreeing, is to unlock the potential that is inherent in every child, absolutely regardless of difference, so that we can truly see what the gifts that they bring to the world and the community. That was it in a nutshell, Christina. That was your question answered.
Thank you so much. So for me, the first question, in order to understand fully what is the difference, what is the specific, if you could, you or Ian, maybe Kate, you could just describe how is it look like, feel like, on the day-to-day level, this system where everybody is working together, therapists, teachers, parents. How is it? What is the system?
I can start with that happily. I think what I see every day is based on observation. It's creating a space where the children feel safe. It's creating an environment where they know that they can be, that they are respected, that they are trusted, that they are part of the space that they're in. They're not just visitors in the classroom. They are creating their own environment within that space. And so they're very much part of what happens on a day-to-day basis. We all work together. It's a collaboration, really. So that's what I'm seeing. And I think it's really about getting to know the children that you're with every day. It's about, but really knowing them, not just knowing their interests, not knowing what they like and don't like. It's really about seeing them, like Emma said, like seeing them through a lens, but really seeing them, really seeing what emotions they feel when they interact with different things, and how you can start those conversations about, you know, what are they feeling, how, and sharing your own emotions with them. I think that's so important as well, so that they get to know you just as much as you're getting to know them. I think that's really what helps facilitate that special bond that you create with the child and all the children in that space. I think it's time. I think it's patience. I think it's a lot of care and respect. Yeah, I think it's all those things that I see every day in the classroom, and that really makes it such a special place. I think anybody who walks in there just kind of knows that this is a place where we're all in it together. It's not a teacher-child classroom at all. It's really about all of us being together. Yeah, that's about it.
I think it comes from that foundation of trust, doesn't it, Kate? I think you've said in the past that you give the trust to begin with, alongside really, really clear expectations and boundaries, so that the children feel empowered by being trusted to do certain things. And part of that, I suppose, is very practical in allowing them things that they can do, so they feel that sense of control within themselves. I love coming in and seeing them cleaning out the bunny rabbits, or there's you've got like a little contingent of kids that really appreciate the spray bottles and like to disinfect things when they just need to find their calm, co-regulate together with the spray bottles. But to come into your classroom is really something very special, because there's a very large number of children in the group, of huge range of ages, you know, the youngest being 6 all the way up to almost 12 years old, and they are all working to varying degrees. And I think that's really quite something else.
May I just pass the ball to Ian? How is it in the teens?
Well, having had experience in different kinds of educational settings, the uniqueness for me is a personal experience. So I have the experience of participating in their world and in their learning, whereas maybe a previous experience, if we talk about conventional ways of learning, it almost feels, my experience there would be an orchestrator of what would happen in a classroom, whereas I feel that I am an element of what's actually unfolding in the classroom with the students. So maybe to the degree with having some expertise and being a wee bit older, I could be an initiator of things, but actually all the doing and all the creating and all the exploration is happening with the students, and I'm experiencing that with them. They're taking me through their experience rather than me lassoing them and getting them to run after me. So that's the uniqueness from me. It's real, it's live, it's palpable, and dynamic. So absolutely, as an educator, that's the reality of what you want to see. That's the essence of what learning is. Participatory.
May I ask one of our therapists here? I think today it's something usual to see a therapist in a school. This is your first time you work in a school, actually, right, Katrina? Or it's
to be school-based, to be part of the ethos and in the school kind of environment and being part of it, yes. Being part of the fabric of EMAS.
Oh, okay. So if you can just for whoever is listening and doesn't know what occupational therapy is, maybe just in a few words, what are you doing in the school?
Oh, Christina, how can I put occupational therapy in a few words? Because it does the lifespan, and you're always asked, what is occupation for children? And I suppose for me, occupation for children is everything that they need to do, want to do, and have to do. And it encompasses all environments from play, home, and in the school, in EMAS. It is so vast that, as Ian was saying, part of my therapeutic relationship is I'm not there to dictate or to control the narrative. The child is always at the centre. The child is always at the centre, and then, everybody around them, the ripple. So their closest teachers, guides, family, that is so important. And I suppose for me, when I meet each and every child, I'm seeing them as who they are, what they bring, what they've learned, what they hope to learn. I don't see them as, a reduction of either diagnoses or age. I look at where they are, and from that, we co-create and build their skills, look at maybe where they've adapted and compensated, because they know what they have to get to, and children are amazing at getting to where they need to get to. And I suppose that's one thing about the Montessori sensorial materials, is it is so supportive, and you can accommodate and adapt and still allow and support that child to flourish and achieve and grow and become, they take ownership of that. So I think it's very exciting for me as an occupational therapist, being part of the team and linking in with all the kind of skill sets and tapping into, the Montessori approach. I mean, I'm convinced Maria Montessori was an OT at heart. I keep saying that.
So taking them from whatever they are at the moment and helping them to grow into where they want to be. Is it a good?
It's about, so children are very good at adapting and compensating, and those strategies are not always the best. They work at that moment. They work at that moment in time, but as they grow and the demands increase or the expectations increase, the structure that they've maybe put into place won't kind of take the weight they need it to. And for me, it's about, breaking that down, letting them kind of build their own resilience, see their strengths, revisit activities or strategies they're using that are not the best, and help them, like Ian was saying, I put all this out to them and we work together, but their achievement is their achievement. It's always their achievement, their realization, and giving them that confidence to kind of take it forward. Because for me, this early intervention, this getting it in early, supporting them, giving them the strategies to self-regulate, to be more mindful, to take that breath that they need to do, is going to set them up for life. Because life is busy and manic. And in the Montessori environment, they are encouraged to take the lead and kind of grow and evolve. We're just along for the ride, and it's a joyful experience. So
I think the OT stuff really comes down always to that looking at the child's need for movement, for sensory integration, and for a sense of self that comes through those things and their connection, the connection that those things give the child with the planet and with other people. And so what's been really helpful for me is when Katrina is able to come and observe children in the classroom with a full understanding of how our classrooms operate. Because previously, I mean, in our school, we've always worked with medical professionals coming in, but they tend to see the child in isolation. Then they come and make one observation, and then they would give us some feedback on what that kid needs. And the feedback that we've received is always very well-meaning, but it's always been about how we can help the child sit still at a desk and hold their pencil correctly. And because the assumption is that that's our aim. And we don't have the need for the children to sit still all the time. So their need for gross motor movement it can be met more easily. But what I've seen you doing, Katrina, is like really working with a child to help, if they're older and have that self-awareness, to help them understand what makes them feel calm, what makes them feel centered, what helps them to listen and focus, and what do they like to do just for fun. So they're getting to know themselves better, and that translates so beautifully into their work in the classroom, because you then communicate with Ian, with Kate, and with all the other teachers in our school about what's working for that child. And I just love that when they develop what you call a sensory diet. And so we're building that in then to all the activities in the classroom. And Kate can maybe give us an example of some of the things that you've added into the classroom based on discussions that you've had with the therapeutic team.
Oh yes, we've added lots of things. We now have a sensory corner, which have got lots of different fidget toys or sensory items to support sensory breaks. I'm often chatting to Katrina and pointing things out and saying to her, what can I add here? What can I do with this? How should I change that? It's extremely helpful. The children, I don't need to explain to a single child in the class what a wall push is. They all know how to push a wall and the technique involved in wall pushes. So it's often I'll see things, I'll think, is this the right thing to do? I'll check in with Katrina if I feel like it's OT based, or Rachel if I feel like it's something that she could support more. And in that way, we're always kind of deep in conversation about what more can we do to support a child, what's changed, what can we change within the space that's going to allow them to flourish more than they are already. So it's always talking, adding, adapting, growing, always.
And echoing Montessori's iconic words, which were change the environment, not the child. And so I think that what having a therapeutic team as part of the school has taught me is that there is so much more change possible within an environment than I really knew with only my teacher training. And it's opened up a whole new realm of understanding. And to watch Kate say to a child who clearly just is expressing a need to have a bit of extra movement, and that's a child who's been moving around the classroom, but Kate can see or Ian can see that they're starting to become a bit of a disruptive influence within the classroom, and just giving them the nod that it's the time to go and find that really heavy weighted ball and slam it into the concrete floor in that space where that's allowed to happen. And they go off and do that and come back. And in Ian's class, I've seen you, Ian, with the weights and getting them to do push-ups and go off for a run or go for, and to be able in the middle of the working day to identify that there's one or two pupils who just need to go and get fresh air and a walk. I think with teenagers that is something that's quite valuable to be able to do. Just ask them to go around and come back again. But it's all leading to that development of their own understanding of self and their sense of self and their orientation of themselves within familiar environments, and then hopefully translating into unfamiliar environments. I think maybe Rachel, maybe you can explain a bit about how you contribute to that.
Great. Yeah, so I'm an art therapist and I've been working at EMAS for a few years. I think it's always just been a really exciting environment to work with. And I think, having Kat now sort of on team as well as a therapist has just been so helpful. And I think it just reiterates everything we're talking about today to do with that holistic approach to learning, that when a child needs an OT appointment or a art therapy appointment, it doesn't involve suddenly going off to another environment that they don't know about. Actually, it's almost like an extension of the classroom, and it's hopefully saying to the children, actually that every part of you is important at school. And, as we've talked about already, it's not just your learning, it's how you're growing emotionally, it's how you're growing in sort of how you're able to do things and your energy and all those different types of things. So I think that's what's really exciting for me, kind of working embedded within the Montessori school. And then just having those moments where I can catch Kate at the beginning of the day and check up on a child, or do the same with Kat. I think those little moments are so valuable at just being able to really work the children in a really kind of, a way that's really, we're just keeping them at the centre of it all the time and sort of journeying with them, not just on a once a week basis, but you're just able to get the information off teachers sort of for the week, how they're doing this week. I think that's been really helpful. I think, sorry, was someone else inputting then? Should I keep going for a minute? I think with art therapy, and we also have music therapy and play therapy trainees at school, we're just able to look and support our children's emotional needs and social needs and mental needs as well within that. Often I'm talking with Christina about just the idea that actually it's really normal alongside development for children to hit little bumps where they just need a little bit of support to be picked back up again. And hopefully, having the kind of therapeutic team at school and working so closely with teachers, it just allows us to sort of do a bit of hand holding during that bump to sort of let them sort of release them back on that kind of journey of growth. And I think just the fact that the children know us, they see us around school, we're familiar faces, I think can really also support the work in the room as well. So I think that's also a real benefit of being in the school environment.
So I was just wondering, because it goes around my head. We have you are Ian, you're also a Gestalt therapist, and we have Katrina, therapist again, and therapist again. And sometimes, and I'm going to challenge you on this, and you're welcome to say, no, this is not that. We sometimes think about therapy, there's something wrong. There's something not okay with my child. And I'm talking about it because as a parent coach, it's usually the case. When something is not like my ideal idea of the child I have, my child is not doing okay, well, something is broken. So my question here, and you kind of touched a little bit, Rachel, here with somebody just posted, I totally agree. Thank you. So my question here, invite us inside the system. Just explain us, how is it really? how is a therapist working with the child, and how I would say you're not here to repair something because the child is broken, but you're doing something else. What is it that you're really doing? Maybe Yen, if you want to.
I think it's a really, really important question. I think some of the things have already been touched on. But it's how do we understand growth, or how do we understand development? I think what therapeutic approaches have at their core is an understanding of what that might be. Maybe different approaches apply that knowledge in different ways. But I would say that fundamentally, we're looking at development, and maybe we can understand growth to come in stages, but it's not necessarily linear. And in fact, there's no such thing as good or bad development. There's just supported or unsupported development. And in fact, where we might think that a child is displaying something that could be understood to be a problem, it might be their unique responses to a set of conditions or circumstances that they haven't experienced that support, and they've adjusted to that in a very creative way. But when there hasn't been some sort of support, it might be that a need has never been identified. And I think that's the core of what therapy might be about, not just identifying need, but exploring with the young person their awareness of what their needs might actually be. And I think in that, then there's a possibility of huge transformation of all the things that we're talking about at the heart of what the school is trying to do. So I don't think it might be that there's some understanding that you're fixing something that's broken, but I would say that in fact what you're doing is allowing growth to happen in a way that would be unique to every child. So it's a model for growth rather than a puncture repair outfit. It's an opportunity for exploration as well. And what greater thing can happen to any person, but especially a young person, to know what they want and know how to go for that, and also know that they can ask for support or the right kind of support that they might need. That's a flourishing individual that I would see there. So I definitely see that it's absolutely crucial. I might not be applying therapeutic measures in my classroom, but certainly that view or that training has been absolutely essential. Essential for, I'm getting emotional. Absolutely essential for me to understand the wholeness or the totality of a young person. And it only comes through just by, awareness of seeing and knowing and understanding. But they know themselves best. And that's the reality. And we have to find ways to impact that.
I think that's this demystifying, and I suppose the term therapy seems to have almost negative connotations, and it's not that. It's not, as Ian says so beautifully, it's not about trying to fix the individual, because the individual is perfect in the way they are. You're just trying to give them the support and the security in a safe environment where they're heard, they're valued, they're seen, they're listened to kind of look into themselves, work with you to unpick it, because it's like, and I'm sure everybody will agree, even Kate, Emma, yourself, Ian, and Rachel. It's about therapeutic use of self. You're opening yourself up in order to ensure that the child feels they're listened to and has the confidence in you to know that what you're doing, you aren't there to fix them. You're there to empower them. And, there's nothing, even the smallest progress it's their achievement, and you want them to develop that confidence and self-efficacy and own it. You've done that. That's hard work. And yes, you've maybe had to unpick things, but the outcome is much better in the longer term. So yeah, I think for me, I would hope to demystify and kind of take the power of the word therapist or therapy, because that's not how I view myself. I know it's in my title, but we go on about trying not to put people into boxes or kind of pigeonhole them and see them in this. And I think we as a group, we value each other. I'll go to Kate, I've asked Ian, I've spoken to Rachel, I've touched to them and said, I'm looking at this from this perspective, can I see it from yours? And that's such an important skill to model, to demonstrate, and to embed.
It does. I think you made me think of Hamish, who must now be at university. But Hamish enrolled in our school when I was just running it with a wonderful co-teacher, and I was teaching in the classroom, and it was a little nursery school. And Hamish came to us with the deepest love for David Attenborough that I've ever seen in a 4-year-old. And all he did was read, watch, listen to David Attenborough. And I particularly am a fan of David. So we bonded over this. But Hamish also, if he wasn't allowed to talk about David Attenborough and animal facts, got very upset. And Hamish got so upset sometimes that he smashed stuff. And I have to say that as a small nursery setting with 2 teachers who we were both relatively experienced at the time, we used to sit with Hamish's parents and we used to say, because they were kind of worried how he would cope in school when he left our nursery. And we used to say, there's nothing wrong with Hamish. He has the most fascinating intellect. And what we need to do, and our job here, is to help channel that in a positive direction. And we knew we had to satisfy him intellectually because that mind was just incredible. And we ended up, the offshoot was we learned a lot of stuff about animals, which was pretty awesome. So the job is never boring, and that doesn't hurt, does it? But now, if I had had the insight that I have gained from the learning I have gained from you guys, and from having this multidisciplinary team, I can see all the things I could have done for Hamish, even though he was only there for nursery. We didn't have a primary school at that time. And I really hope, I just know that young man is doing amazing things now, because the potential was there. And Montessori always tells us to see the child that is not yet there. And I think that by having a therapeutic team, and in our school, they're not with us tonight, although Rachel, you straddle both genres, but we also have a team of creative arts specialists, some of whom are in therapy and some of whom are therapists. They may also be in therapy, but I don't know that for a fact. But they're after working in our school, quite possibly. But there's something about having this incredibly rich and diverse range of passionate humans to work with that sets the scene for developing just the right kinds of supports. And they're supports, they're translations. So if I don't understand a child, I was lucky, I understood Hamish really well, but I've had other children in my classes that I did not understand. And I've had to sit with parents over the years and say, and I know every head teacher has been in this position, say to a parent, our school cannot support your child anymore. And to be the only Montessori school in Scotland and the only people doing what we do, and to have to sit and tell someone that is utterly heartbreaking, because I don't really know where else they're going to go. And so this just gives me tunnel vision, these kinds of experiences, because I feel that our purpose is to advocate for these children. And so we must show what it is that all children deserve. And now, I mean, in Scotland, educational policy is highly progressive and advocates inclusion, complete inclusion. But inclusion looks very different depending on the school that you're in. And I don't accept, and I know that none of my colleagues accept that inclusion means there's a little room where the difficult kids can go to calm down. The end. We all are lifelong learners, and we want to encourage that in our children. And so by having these multiple languages it's like multiple ciphers to really decode what's going on for children who do have a more complex presentation, then we can allow the inclusion, real inclusion, to happen, where you have a much broader stream within the whole classroom. And speaking as a parent of a child who has autism, my child has been so incredibly fortunate to have this team, because my child could have had myriad problems at school, but has been so privileged to know all of you, to be respected by you. He has friends, he has interests, he has passions, and he is understood. And that's, as a parent, the foremost thing that I could ever ask for my child. And he's learning as well. Wow, what a great bonus. He learns new stuff. So I want to be able, as an educator, to provide that experience for other parents. And I think I was just going to bounce it back a little bit to you, Christina, because you're hiding in the corner of my screen, but you provide an additional service at the school where you actually, I know as a staff, you act as a well-being coach, but you also provide coaching services for parents who are perhaps just needing to unlock their potential, to unlock their child's potential.
Yes, exactly. And I think coaching is a piece of work that we recently did to this team. So parent coaching, I see that as space for parent to be able to step back, relax, and think. And if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. When you have a child, and we all have a child who have something in the moment, this unique skill that you could have, be able to step back and think and relax, is the most important skill you could have when you become a parent. So coaching is a space that I think help parents to do that and learn to do that. And most of the time as parents, we love our children. Well, normally we love our children, and we worry a lot, and we want the best for our children, right? We want them to thrive and become the most amazing people in the world. And for that, we always feel guilty. We didn't do enough, and we didn't go in the right direction, and we most of the time don't know what direction to take. So take a step back, relax, and start to think. Have a space where you could just realize that you also have all the resources to thrive and become the parent you want to be. I just got a really nice feedback for you, Ian, from Moshe. Thank you, on LinkedIn, who is listening to us. There is no such a thing as good or bad development, only supported or unsupported development. In Montessori terms, that totally speaks to understanding the equation matching of materials to sensitive periods for individual children. So we have our Montessori educators here. Would you like to comment on that?
Go on, Kate.
Yeah, I think in terms of the sensitive periods of children, the one that takes place in elementary a lot is that growth of imagination, that huge creative imagination that wants to take on the world it wants to know big things and it wants to understand them, and they're incredible. When I want to talk about maths, they want to talk about millions, billions. They want to work out equations where it's not possible on the material, and so we need to make new material to go with the material in order to do these huge things. And I think also thinking about children who in that moment might need support with whatever material it is that they're working with. It's observing them and looking at what adaptations we can make. So yes, we have a set of amazing Montessori materials, and yes, they're designed to be used in a certain way, but I really strongly feel that Maria Montessori would have liked the way that we try to change things, the way that we adapt things so that everything works for each child, that we're not trying to conform the child to the material, but rather that the material is conforming to the child's needs. So I think, yes, thinking about an example that you saw in the classroom the other day, Emma, there was a child who was desperate to work with something called the pin maps, wanting to manipulate pins with the labels of country names to place them on a map with holes in it. And it was difficult for this child to do that, to manipulate the pins to fit in the right place for them to stay there. When he wanted to put the next one in, he would knock some out. This was really hard for him, but it was something that he felt he wanted to complete. And so we looked at, okay, what adaptations can we make for this material? And we printed out a map of Africa and looked at, okay, so you want to know what the countries are for Africa. Well, let's write them down. And immediately I got this feeling that this child was pushing away from me, like, no, I don't want to write. And I said, that's also fine. What else can we do? And we printed the names of the countries to allow him then to go through the process of labeling each of the countries, which is what he started with, what he wanted to do. And therefore he was able to meet that need, but in a way that wasn't frustrating for him anymore. It gave him the same satisfaction, but with making an adaptation that worked for him. So I think it's...
Sorry, Kate, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
I was just going to say, I think it's important to give the additional context that that particular child has medical reasons why they actually struggle with that. It's not a young child just saying no for the sake of saying no, or a kid being a bit difficult about not wanting to write. This is a child who physically is unable to do those things easily. And so the adaptation was something essential for them to access. So we're talking that, I mean, really, that's a question of accessibility. And if we as Montessori educators employ an ableist approach to anything that we do, we cut out a huge section of society when we say, oh, well, if you can't do, you can't lift the pink tower with your hands in this order, etc., then the end. And you were just reminding me of an absolutely lovely example of a 3-year-old who was particularly unwilling to build the pink tower in the way that their nursery Montessori teacher was showing them. And the teacher came to me, and this is before we had a therapeutic team, but the teacher came to me and kind of went, please come and look at this child. They seem really bright, and I can't get them to build the pink tower. And we know this, as Montessori educators, this activity, for anybody who doesn't know what I'm on about, is an early sequencing activity with this, where you arrange the blocks in order of size. And I came, and the child was what I now know Katrina would call a movement seeker. So was very, very active, very chatty. There was no silent Montessori presentation going to be involved for this child, and couldn't seem to hold his attention on what I was showing, but I knew the child could do it. And so adaptation I had to make in that circumstance, and it was just a natural thing that I did. I knew the child really, really liked machinery, so I made digger noises to capture his interest. And so my arms went and placed the blocks on one by one. And the child watched the whole presentation and repeated it beautifully, and then went on to absolutely nail the pink tower and all the following activities. And the teacher went, wow, what? I didn't know I could do that. And I was kind of, I've always been a bit sort of like, what do you mean you didn't know you could? I'm someone who didn't realize people had to tell you what you could and couldn't do. I just do stuff, and then I hope that, I think there's a saying, isn't there, just about apologizing afterwards. It's the character flaw, or plus in many ways. But I think, yeah, so I wasn't familiar with that. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. Oh, my trainer told me that I had to only do it in this one way. And I think that perpetuates a lot of myths about Montessori education, which we are currently blowing out the water with our progressive approaches. And I know that many other schools are. And I think that what's brought us very close together as a team has been to collaboratively study the Montessori for Inclusion course that's run by Catherine Massey and Barbara
Lubrowski.
Thank you.
Catherine's Montessori and Barbara's the OT.
And they are really promoting this multidisciplinary approach. And what we're trying to create is a hybrid medical social model. So you are able to view the child through multiple lenses and be able to pinpoint, as Ian said, where you can provide a little bit of extra support.
May I come up with a question here? So Montessori and your whole approach is based on this concept of Maria Montessori, follow the child, and it's totally individual oriented. What this single child need. So my question is about the limits. What is the limit? What are the limits when you create an environment that is really focused on the individual needs, comparing to the group, what the group needs? So how you actually balance the group needs and the individual needs?
So I'll answer, and I think other people will add. So as an OT, if you create the environment for the person that needs that, the accommodations, the adaptations, you're still creating an environment where the others will flourish. What we're trying to say, and I think what's been said beautifully, is it's about the individual child, getting them at the right stage, at that right level, and accessing that. So when you create an open environment, you're giving every child the best chance to thrive and grow. It's not about trying to create a false environment for that one individual. It's about creating the environment where those that can manage and are independent can continue to do so, but for those that need the accommodations and the adjustments, they can also do it within the same environment. It's about inclusion. It's not segregating or separating them or making them stand out, because they're such unique individuals. And I know we're talking about learning, but some of my best learning for me has come from these children. And I've learned from them just as much as they've learned from me. And I think if you try and, as Ian talked about, a prescriptive approach, everybody's in a box, you don't see the magic that's in the box until it's totally burst open and everybody's allowed to just be the best version of themselves.
I think I can add to that in terms of, Maria Montessori spoke a lot about the freedoms that we offer the child, but it's always the freedoms within limits. So it's giving the child the boundaries, letting them see where that freedom can extend to. So often at the start of a year in elementary, we will talk about and we will make it big poster that the children are all part of making and displaying, where we discuss the freedoms of the classroom, but within those freedoms, what are the responsibilities that each of us in the classroom have? So we talk a lot about movement, and Emma was talking about movement earlier. So we have the freedom to move, and that's absolutely ideal for a Montessori classroom. However, what are the responsibilities that go along with movement? And these are always, we just wait to see what the children come up with. Obviously, we can prompt them if they're not coming up with any ideas, but they often do. You know, we've got the freedom to move around the classroom, but we have the responsibility to make sure we're moving in a safe way. We have the responsibility to make sure that we're not jumping over somebody's work, that we're respecting where somebody else is working, and we're moving carefully around their work. Another freedom might be we have the freedom to communicate with each other. So we have the freedom to talk and to speak, but we have the responsibility to make sure that we're doing that in a kind way, that we're using kind words, that we're being inclusive in our conversations, and that we're keeping it at a good volume for the classroom so that we're not disturbing anybody. So these are all things that are discussed all the time. And, you know, we might need to remind a child about them from time to time, but it's always done with kindness and respect. So, you know, thank you for remembering that we need to walk in the classroom, because you know that if we move too quickly, we might bump into somebody or knock somebody's work, and that, you know, that might hurt that friend. So, you know, everything is done with a lot of kindness and respect, but it is all about those freedoms, but within limits.
I would like to speak to that as well, specifically in terms of the age group or the adolescents that are teaching. I would say in reality for them, you know, we could consider, you know, the individual or the group or the self and the environment. In reality, the transformation that goes on for an adolescent, it actually covers both of those things. So they are both an element of a group and an individual at the same time. And because they have in developing that capacity to differentiate themselves from others, then it's always the opportunity to bring awareness to what's happening, to bring awareness to maybe choices they're making as a response to their learning and context, or choices they're making because there's maybe some fixed, rigid way that they've developed that kind of isn't allowing that kind of process of change or growth to take place. So conversations and dialogue and raising awareness, and always by raising the awareness, then what you're really doing is showing the young person or the adolescent that they actually are both an individual and a member of a group at the same time. And I think just like Kate said, of those values of kindness and trust and respect, that comes through of being interested in both those kind of polarities of I need this, at the same time I'm also intrinsically part of that group that needs me too. In fact, that's a bigger reflection of myself as well. And this is the same all the time for teenagers. It's a constant renegotiation of the world. I mean, we kind of consider what adolescent is. It's something that appeared in the 19th century. It's not a fixed kind of thing. It's an ongoing understanding of this phase of life between being a child and being an adult. It's always in flux, just like their own self is in flux, and their own self can be experienced in relationship to the teacher, having a conversation about what's occurring, about choices they're making, or choices they might be making out of awareness as well. So they're indeed opportunities, I think. But of course, if the need is such and it's clear, then you support to sharpen that, and hopefully we've got the options for them, you know. And I think that that's the creativity that they can then see coming from their own discussion with another person, that they've come up with something, they've established something, and they've made a choice. Yeah, I need to focus this on individually, and I'm aware that I'm going to have to differentiate from that group, but I know they're there at the same time. Or I really need to work on this, but yeah, I'm working and I'm living and I'm learning in a collaborative environment. So they begin to make the choice. And I think that's where the freedom and the happiness and everything else that Emma was talking about earlier, you know, it's as much as doing a beat and feeling empowered as it is about completing things and getting them done. But that's really important as well.
Happiness, freedom, and accomplishment. So we are at the end of our webinar today. Last words, if you want to add, comment. Thank you so much for your presence and your beautiful comments and answers. What can I say? Next month, our webinar is going to be about, let me think, Edinburgh Montessori Art School. So what is the link between art and the school? Why is it so important to bring art in a school?
We're hoping that Rachel will join us again for that one, to use the other campus she represents.
Exactly. And
we're
how
hear much more from you then.
And even if we are talking about art and teaching separately, how to bring them together, how to bring, I like this word, artistry in your everyday life, in your teaching, in your way to go forward in life. So this is the program. We will publish the next date really shortly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to us and your beautiful comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Christina. Can I give my last thought? Is it okay? They don't really end, but I will. I promise to stop. This has been a really pleasurable discussion to have with all of you. This is a little bit like of extra shop talking for us, which I know we all get a lot out of. But you're reminding me of a quote which I shamefully can't attribute to somebody, but that came up recently while I was studying to write an essay about collaborative working. And it was just really detailing. I'm just going to paraphrase it, that the moment when each individual teacher, educator, therapist, the moment when each individual realizes that no one person can bring enough to a learning environment to meet all the needs that they will encounter from the children, is the moment that they can open their eyes to collaborative working. And I think that that's something that we've really been able to develop in the last few years in our school. And I'm very grateful to this incredibly awesome group of people that I get to see every day. So I look forward to collaborating further with you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.